So now that we've got a little bit of the flavor of video editing, we're ready to take it to the next step. And so we're ready for part 2 of Marvin's presentation today. And this one's going to run a little bit longer, I think 30 to 35 minutes looks like in this particular part. So Marvin, please tell us more.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I put in the chat there's a document that you'll be able to access links to the editing software. So you'll see a link to DaVinci Resolve, OpenShot, and there's a few others as well as some YouTube videos that I have found for a lot of them as well. And right now we're going to open up OpenShot. So this is the OpenShot editor. And when you open it up, it'll look like this here. So this would be the simple view. And you'll see all of your media, which will be right here. So you see it already looks a lot simpler, a lot more easier to use than perhaps DaVinci Resolve. You don't have as many tabs. This is an editing platform really. And actually as a side note, DaVinci Resolve, it actually started out as a color tool for video production, for movie production. So that's where it started out. So it wasn't actually an editing platform until later on. Then they started adding in the editing page, and then they added in Fairlight, and they added so many things over the years. So it's been pretty cool with all the updates for DaVinci Resolve. There's this constant updates with it. But here we're going to focus here on OpenShot. So when you open this up, this is going to be completely empty. And what you can do is you'll be able to drag and drop your video files into here. So you'll access your file, you'll left click it, you'll drag it all the way over to this little open space, and then you'll have it all of your footage over here. And so to move it onto the timeline, you just left click it and you can just drag it. And this is where it gets fascinating, because you can literally do anything with video. That's what's pretty cool when it comes to editing, because you can do whatever you like with the footage. So you actually have quite a lot of power, really. When people hand you their video footage, you have a lot of power what you can do for it, which is pretty interesting. So with power comes great responsibility as well. So, and here you'll be able to play it, and then you'll see it playing on the screen here. I didn't film this, by the way. This is just stock video footage. My camera is not that good, but not yet anyways. And yeah, so you'll be able to play it through. And when you hover over the edges, and the same thing works with pretty much every editing software, really. If you hover over the edge, you're going to see these sideward arrows. And if you're able to extend it out more, you'll be able to drag it out, and you'll be able to drag it in, and you see the clip is going to shrink. So that's the way to move the clip. And I can click on this one, and then I can do the same thing. So I can click and drag. Sometimes you have to give it some room though. Click and drag the clip. So that's another way to cut, is by dragging, if you just need to shorten the clip to fit it in. And for this one, you would look and looking for the blade tool. So you just look for anything that is related to a cut, really. That would be the most common tool really that you'll use when it comes to basic editing, is the cut tool, because you just need to cut the clips so that you can move them along the timeline to place them wherever you want them to go, so it can formulate your story. And that's why it's so useful when you have a script and you know exactly where all the words need to go on the timeline. You don't have to, there's less moving around, there's less guessing, and it's a lot smoother and quicker process when you have a script that you're following. So when you click on this here, and I'm actually not as familiar with using this particular software myself, actually. So, but you would go and click that, and it should cut in a perfect world. Let's see. Yeah, I gotta zoom in or something. There it goes. Or maybe you have to double click on it. Yeah, so wherever the playhead is located. Oh yeah, you have to double click up here. Yeah, so wherever the playhead is located, you will just double click on it and it will make a cut. And then you'll be able to move, well, you can go back over to the cut tool, and then that will turn it off. So you'll be able to then move the clip from there. You got copy multiple clips here. It's fascinating. But you really just play around with it until it does what you will like it to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is pretty fascinating. I've never seen this before.
Marvin, may I ask a question? Why would you use multiple tracks?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, so, and I'll answer that over in DaVinci Resolve. Yeah, so I played around with this a little bit more, but it looks like it's interesting because when you cut these clips, now it didn't, or I'm just interested where these are coming from, or maybe I must have overlaid multiple clips on here. Can you do that? Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. But yeah, so for multiple clips or multiple tracks, so I'll go over to another timeline where I had some layers. Well, this would be an example. I believe this is one I did for either Marcus or Madonna. Yeah, this one was Marcus's. So you can see there are numerous different audio tracks, and here there's numerous different video tracks. It's kind of interesting for me. Like, I'm sure OpenShot is it's quite basic to use, really, but it's like I actually have to figure out myself how to figure out how to use OpenShot. I actually felt like it's easier for me to cut clips and move them around the timeline using DaVinci Resolve for me. But but perhaps that's just me. But I'm sure it's quite easy to use OpenShot as well. When you look at the timeline here, there are different video tracks and they're overlaid.
Marvin, we're still only seeing OpenShot. I think you shared that particular screen as opposed to your.
Oops, my bad. Or let's see, yeah. Or maybe I should share my entire screen. That way I won't, because there's no way I'm gonna remember that every time. Yeah. I had like no sleep today, so and so you'll see here there are multiple tracks. So there's video track 1, there's video track 2, 3, and so on and so forth. Now, this isn't the most organized timeline on the planet, but the whole idea here is, you see here, these are 2 different camera angles. And this is when I was using my laptop, so I couldn't use the multicam feature, which will enable you to, like, over on the left screen. So you see the right screen, you can see the video on the right screen, or on the left screen, you'll be able to pull up the multi-screen, and you'll be able to see the split screen. So as it's playing, you can see both cameras at the same time. But on that one Google Doc, there are some specifications for some computer requirements, because it does take a bit more of a powerful computer to run DaVinci Resolve. And there are some specs that are in that document that you'll be able to find. Yeah, so that would be a big reason to overlay and have multiple video tracks, because here you can have it overlaid and you can cut between the two tracks. But the way I used to do this is actually I used a tool called opacity. And really all that does, it's basically transparency. And so what you do is when it's all the way up to, and I haven't really checked to see if OpenShot has transparency. It probably does. Or opacity, I mean. But what that does is it will make the shot appear, or you can see it. It's pretty cool though. This is where it gets fun when you start editing, because you can start fading into stuff and fading out. But the way I used to do this, because I couldn't use the multicam, is I would just turn the opacity all the way down, so that way I can cut and overlay the various different tracks. So, and then you can have B-roll. So you probably heard of B-roll before in video productions. That's basically like you would have your main shots, your core shots, which was oftentimes somebody speaking, or it could be like an interview, or it could be, you know, just somebody talking, and then you'll have some other clips that will relate to what they're talking about that will be used as B-roll, and you'll be able to overlay those onto additional tracks. So here, this is track 3. So it has, I put that on top of here. So this is Marcus. What's a photo of him running in track? Yeah, so you can utilize multiple tracks there. And the same thing with audio. And I've been doing more and more with audio. You can use sound effects and all kinds of fun stuff with audio and that's really why there's so many audio tracks. It probably looks more complicated than it really is, really, because it's really just, you start with nothing really, and then you just keep building upon it. It's just like you're building a pyramid from like the bottom, and it just keeps growing. And then and that's the beauty in it, because it's not always a smooth process. Like sometimes it's a struggle, sometimes you get blocked, and that's why I really like to have some sort of script, because it makes it more complicated for there to be a block, because at least you're going to have the base layer of your content, so you can quickly create that. Yeah, so in all this is like these are different sounds that are playing. And I didn't really know too much back then, I don't think, about like stereo versus mono, I don't think, but basically with stereo, what it would do is, you know how when you're on headphones, you hear something on the left ear, you hear it on the right ear. So it's in stereo mode. And if the audio is recorded in stereo, you'll hear perhaps maybe even different sounds from your right ear versus the left ear. But if it's in mono, it basically mixes it all together, so it's all uniform, so you hear the same thing in both ears. But a lot of times it's better to have things in stereo, and then you can get a little bit better, more creative sound by utilizing the stereo. But yeah, so that would be the reason to overlay those various different tracks. Now, I really like to figure out where these clips. This is pretty fascinating. This is, if someone can figure that out for me, that would be fantastic.
Maybe it wound up doing like a copy when you cut, because that's pretty weird.
Yeah, because this is like coming out of nowhere. I've never seen that before. Yeah, because I didn't like hit the copy button or anything. I just tried to cut it. It's very fascinating. I don't know, let me just drag this down here and try to cut. Let's see. Okay, that doesn't do it. Yeah, I must have did something. Oh, that one did it there too. Huh. What kind of razor tool is this? It's like a razor duplicate tool. Huh. That's very interesting. Does it get another one? Yeah, see, it's like never ending. It's so strange. And that's hilarious. Yeah, so that's something to investigate, really. Yeah, it's. And the one thing when I was looking into this, I was just curious of like just making sure I was able to make cuts on here and move it around. And I just never thought that you would have clips coming out of nowhere. That's pretty cool. But now, so now we have like the basics of it. But when it comes to this particular software, and the reason why I really like to use this DaVinci Resolve is because and also there's some other softwares that are less computer intensive. With OpenShot, I'm not able to see the waveforms. Well, there's no waveforms on this. Let me bring something that has waveforms. So here is John Sopchick's speech. So this has audio, and so be able to display the waveform, and hopefully I will display it and not crash.
I'll be talking about some of the techniques you can
Here's
use
audio.
to enhance your Zoom experience. The first thing I want to do is just show you a little something, and I know you can't see my screen if I share it, so I'm actually going to share my screen first.
Yeah, this looks like it's crashing. Oh well.
Now, you should see a Mr. Meeseeks on my gets a chance to work from home, and if you have a garden, work in the garden. It is so zen-like.
It's probably this too much.
Without further ado, I'd like to continue talking about some of the skills. As Kyle said, I'll be talking about some of the techniques you can use to enhance your Zoom.
Cannot stop it. There you go. Now it stopped. But yeah, so the point I was making was that with OpenShot, you can see either the thumbnail or you can see the waveform. As far as I know, you're not able to see both at one time. And for me, I always like to see both of them at one time. At least I'm so accustomed to editing like that. And I oftentimes, like almost always, edit with the waveforms. And DaVinci is kind of weird sometimes. And sometimes the waveforms have been disappearing from time to time. And let's see. Yeah, so but for me, as far as the style that I like to edit, I like to be able to see the waveforms because you'll be able to cut like I was showing before. And at this point, are there any questions or specific?
Quick question.
Oh, yes.
So when you have multiple video tracks and they're all at the same time in the timeline, if they're all full opacity, which one do you see? Is it the top one?
Oh yeah, you're gonna see
Whichever one happens to be
at the very top. Yeah, so
looking down through layers effectively.
Yeah, like this one is, let's see, this one is at, where is the, oh, this is text, so it'll be over here. Yeah, that's text, so it's not gonna, but this is just a layer. Actually, there is no layers really on this piece here. It's just a banner. But yeah, you're gonna see the very top one will be on there, the simple answer for that.
And then you get all the audios from all the layers unless you turn certain audios on?
Wait, yeah, and by default, whenever you add something to the timeline, the volume is always going to be set to typically 0. At least on DaVinci Resolve, it's always set to 0, and you're able to increase the volume up and down, and you see the waveforms are going to change as you're doing that. And yeah, in DaVinci in particular, you just have the inspector, and typically when I'm in the inspector, I'm only really messing with this audio piece and the video piece. I'm not highlighting video right now, so I can't go into video, but I can see the audio, and I see it's at 30. 30 is typically the max that you can go to, which is really, really loud actually. And you know it's loud because the waveforms are going, well, I think it's easier to show it in the other screen, because when you're looking at the the waveforms, when it starts to hit the top of, you know, the green piece, like when it starts to hit the really the very top, that's when it starts to peak.
And distort, right?
Yeah, it gets really distorted, and that's something that you have to keep in mind, because like you go up, see now it's like you can't even see where it starts to kind of round out. It's just like flat, and if I were to play it, sounds horrible. You see, that's the distortion. So that's something to keep in mind when it comes to audio. And so that's just a little bit of audio mixing. There's a lot that goes into audio, really. It's pretty fascinating. I started getting into it a little bit later on, but when it comes to, I'm just gonna, and so now we have kind of like a broad overview. I'm just going to walk through like the process that I would go through, like if I were to receive the video footage, and then how I'll start cutting it up and organizing it. So I'll go into this clip right here, and we're just going to pretend like everybody in this clip said the same thing. And I'm just going to make it easier and clearer. So I'll just open up a new timeline. So the very first thing is, and it depends on how much I have, but for our videos that we're going to be doing, you're typically not going to have that many clips. You might have like 4 or 5 if 4 or 5 people send you a clip. So it's not too important to organize, but most software enables you to add some sort of bins or some sort of folder, which is super helpful. Because like, for example, if like maybe we're going to use Toastmaster logos or other images or photos or something, maybe you want to have something called photos. You could have something, you could have like video clips. Sometimes if there's different cameras, I might name it by the camera, so I know like this bin is that camera, the other bin's the other camera. But typically we're not going to be dealing with that many clips. It'll be relatively simple. And so everything is just here in the master, and here is the main file. So it's just a long Zoom meeting file. So what I would do in this meeting, so there's like 7 or 8 people that had spoken, and this is why I like to see both the video and the audio. I'll be able to identify, you see here's Larry and here is Gary and Deborah, so I can see like where it changes and where it switches, and I can also see where the audio is starting. So like I know that Larry is like, it looks like maybe starting to speak right about there.
Few rolls for a
Or
go over a, okay, I'm gonna thank you, Matt. Thank you.
now
Matt.
I can see he's speaking right there. So if I want like an introduction to it, I'll just cut right there. But there's shortcuts that are to DaVinci Resolve, but I'll just do it. So I basically just use this razor tool, and now there's a cut there. So I'll just go through and I would organize all of them. And say this was like the end of a piece, and I would just cut there. And now I would probably use some sort of marker or something to mark this as, so I know it's a specific person. And it's nice to color code it, because then you know who it, you know that like all the oranges would be Larry, or maybe like all the greens would be Gary or something like that. So you'd be able to organize it. And say I was going to cut this piece here.
Her granddaughter in Kamloops. Take it away, Louise.
Yeah, see he stopped speaking there. And then I can look for the waveform. So I see she's starting to speak right there. So that's kind of the.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Have you ever had the?
So now I see that she's just saying, "Can everybody hear
Can
me?"
everybody hear me?
But then I can just cut right here. And then so I can just use the razor tool and cut. And then you can just zoom out and kind of hover over where she disappears. And so she disappeared there, and then you just find where she stopped talking, and then you can cut there.
Very. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
See, and then you can cut. See, and then you have another piece. And then that's kind of what you can kind of split up, and you just keep repeating that. And then you would have like person A saying the script here, which will be orange. You'll have person B saying the script here, which will be green, and so on and so forth. And then you'll be able to just extract it out from the original timeline. You can just move it away. So it's just, so all you see are the clips that you need. And then what I would oftentimes do is I would take it, and sometimes I would just even hover over, because it's all the same pretty much. And I'll either do that, or I'll just keep them sideways. And another method, this is maybe more so specific to DaVinci, but you can actually have, so what I did here is I just clicked this plus icon in this corner, which opened up another timeline down below, which is pretty cool, because now you can move this down here. And so instead of putting on top of each other, you can just have it like this. So you can just have like all of the clips, like clips A through perhaps say 4 people spoke. It can be A through D, can be all down here. So I'll just kind of separate these. This is actually on purpose. Now I'm duplicating these. And yeah, so like those are the 4. And now it can be easier to scroll through.
Have you ever had the
cut? So this is the way I would typically do it now. That's the way I would do a script video. And then so say this was like an opening I was going to use, and I would cut, and then you can bring it up. And then so that would be the opening. And then I will look for somebody to say the next part of the video. And say I was going to use, say this was the next part of the video. So you would more so listen to it, of course, but we're just pretending like that was the piece of it. And then so you just keep on building it up like that. But then you don't necessarily have to use the stack timeline, but this is the way, like if you're able to do this, and this is the easiest to see really, but you can also have it in a line in the same way. So and the same thing. So you just will cut in this case, but you see now you just lost sight of where you're at. So then it's just a matter of dragging it over instead of being able to drag it upwards, which is pretty cool. You can actually stack multiple timelines actually, but then you need a pretty big screen for that. So that would be the method of building the timeline. So it's pretty straightforward really, because like the only tool you're using, like as you see like all of these various different buttons on the top, but you typically don't even use them. And then you have the open shot is the same thing. Like you have so many different buttons on it, but you're not going to really use all of them really. The only thing you really need to do is cut the clip, adjust the volume, and then know how to export the clip. Will be the core things that you would do. Yeah, I'm not even sure if I want to recover this project. Let's see. maybe there's too many. It's gonna start doing these. So now, I actually never went through the process of exporting a clip on here, so we'll be able to see how simple it is. But there will be a, let's see, typically it'll be like file and export project and export. It looks like you actually can press Control E on the PC to export, and then you'll be able to export the format, which is usually going to be MP4. You can have the resolution. You can keep it this. Typically, it is 1080p usually at 24. Now, I don't know. Usually, I believe Zoom, I think it records at 25 frames per second. I think is what Zoom records on. So if it's a Zoom recording, then you can just do like 1080p at 25 frames per second, and then that would be great. And in a nutshell, really, like 24 frames per second is kind of like the standard for like cinematic footage typically, because it's like the pinnacle of having natural motion blur. And the higher the frame rate that you go, the less motion blur that there is really. So like when you go up to like 120 frames per second, then there's very limited motion blur. But the cool thing about the higher frame rates is that you're able to slow that footage down, and that's what can get you more creative, have a lot more fun with the footage when you're able to slow like footage that's maybe 60 frames per second. You can slow it down to 24 frames per second. So a lot of people would do that, or even go from 30 frames to 24 frames per second to slow down the footage. But I don't know, but the most common frame rates, well, for Zoom, I know for sure it's 25 frames per second. And then, which is kind of like a year, or it might be because Zoom, I think, is an international company, I believe. I think they started internationally, maybe, but because I know 25 frames per second is the standard, like on the other side of the pond. And then on our side, it's 24 frames per second, or a lot of times 23.9 something to be exact. And then you'll just you'll look to see where you want the file to go to and export. So it's really just a matter of file, and you'll probably have to set in and out points is typically. Let's see. It looks like it exports the entire project, and I do not see any option for in and out points. And really what I mean by the in and out points is on some editing software, like say you only wanted to export, like say from this playhead all the way to the left, you would set an endpoint here at the beginning and an out point here at the end, and then that's all you export, and you won't export all of this footage over here. But this appears to be exporting the entire Michael says the broadcast frame rate is 29.97. This appears to be exporting the entire timeline in this way. So you click export. So you just make sure that your timeline is situated. But I would look into seeing if there's a possibility to set in and out points. So really, like, this isn't like today, like it's impossible really to master editing in a day. It's not something like I didn't jump into editing and just become a master at it. And so it's just something that you have to have the desire to really play around with it and really learn how it works. And once you start to see the power in it and the power of the stories that you can communicate, that's what draws me into it. Just the fact that you can literally create something and it'll literally last forever. That you can create a story and then it will live on for as long as video is able to be in existence. And I think that's pretty powerful. Now I'll demonstrate the in and out points on DaVinci here. So, which I use in and out points all the time. So like you can just put an in point, which is usually the I key on the keyboard. I is an icicle, and then an O is in orange. So now you can see that gray line is, I'm just going to remove this timeline. So now this is an in and out point. So if I were to go into the editing or this is the delivery tab, which looks a little bit more than the other one, but it's the same concept. You're really just looking to see how you want to export it custom. I usually use either custom or YouTube, and you'll name the file. I'll just type in name. You'll browse where the file will go. Yeah, so really this is just like the whole goal here is just to learn how to think about editing. Really, it's not really to be a master of it. It's just learning like what to look for when it comes to accessing and roaming around editing software. I just unchecked that typically. So now when I will add this to the queue, now it's only going to render this part. So it's not going to render all this. It's only going to render what's in the in and out point. So that's in and out points. And I'm thinking that OpenShot probably has something similar to that. I just haven't found it at the moment.
If you want to export only part of it, I found where you can tell it what the start frame and end frame is.
Oh, start frame and end frame?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you're exporting it, there's like an advanced tab, and then you go over to do that.
Okay. Let's see.
So there it has the advanced instead of simple, and it's got start frame, end frame.
Okay, I see. That's cool.
Yep.
That's interesting.
So you'd have to like look up what they are, where you're at on the actual timeline, and then note those down.
Okay.
A bit clunky, but doable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is very much so.
But it's kind of OpenShot in general. Clunky, but doable.
Okay.
At least in my experience, it works.
Do you have an answer for like how?
I tried to duplicate that and I couldn't reproduce it. So I might guess like a glitch or something like that.
I don't know. Is
exactly what you were doing, and it wasn't doing it for me.
Or maybe it's because
I tried that.
The magnet?
Yeah, it didn't have any difference whether it was on or off when I did it, or which order I separated them from, or I was speaking with it over here for a bit, trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and this magnet tool, it's found on pretty much every editing software as well, and it's useful. It's useful in times for it to be on. It's useful in times for it to be off. It just depends on what you're doing, really. Because if you're trying to connect clips together, and then I oftentimes like to leave it on because it'll stop before you push through the clip. So you can see it gives you, it like kind of snaps in the place, but when it's turned off, oops, there you go. If it's turned off, then it won't snap. It just keep going. So it can be harder to really get the clips together.
Line up properly.
And if it's not together, then when you play back, there could be a gap in the timeline. So you're going to see like a little black jerky. There's going to be a little black jerky parts because it's going to go from footage to black to footage, which is pretty jerky.
One other thing I just discovered, if you right click on a clip, and there's one that has video, go down to display, show waveform, so you can turn that on.
Oh yeah, that clip doesn't have sound.
So if it has sound, then you can show the waveform. I think you're asking about that.
Yeah, we tried doing that before, and I don't know what happened. I think maybe it was too many clips on here. I'm just going to try to delete some of these.
It's processing over on mine still for a longer video, so it takes a while for it to actually generate the waveform.
All right, so let me take this. Yeah.
Maybe like chop out only a bit of it because it takes a while to process.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's still doing it over on mine.
Oh, wow. Okay. It takes a while on DaVinci sometimes too to load. Sometimes it doesn't load at all. This is weird. All right, let's see. That's a good shot there.
That's a great.
Sorry, Kyle. Okay. All right, let's see. And there's also transitions that you can find on OpenShot as well, and
Fade in, fade out, etc.
it's pretty cool. Yeah, it looks like it's. Oh, that's interesting. It takes that long to load. Okay, there it goes. Nice. Yeah, yeah. So there's the waveforms on here. Yeah, so you just have to choose if you want to see the waveforms or if you want to see the video. As you can't see, but you can see the video over here on the screen, but you just can't see it on top of the waveforms.
There's also an option for thumbnails. That might be what that does on that too. Does it generate that as well?
On thumbnails, or
I think that might be that one.
show thumbnail?
Possibly.
Yeah, it just kind of goes back and forth.
Oh, right. Gotcha.
It's kind of weird.
It's like toggle between the two. Never mind.
Yeah. I kind of wish it would be. I looked around and I couldn't see
Yeah.
how you can see both of them at the same time. But are there any other questions about? Like I'm trying hard to keep it simple because yeah, because it's just it's all about starting where you are and really working your way up to it. Because then you can do all kinds of other fun stuff with sound effects. You can start using the EQ and editing the audio and making the audio sound better. Are there any other, or did you want me to dive into any other parts of DaVinci?
I think we're probably out of time for tonight, though.
That's unfortunate. Okay.
Yeah, we are actually planning in the future to do a follow-up presentation for more advanced skills. So we hope to invite everybody back for that, where we can dig into some of these things a little bit more.
All right. Yeah. Absolutely. I hope that was helpful. And as far as getting started and learning how to look at the editing software, because there's a lot of power in being able to create video content, and then yeah, so you can really help to showcase your club, because you can say a lot in a video that it's really tough to say in text, because because in a video you can display your personality. You can display the personality of your club, which is really hard to display personality through text in that way. So video is a really powerful tool to really communicate what your club is truly about, and that's what James was really talking about in the beginning, and crafting your story. And with that, I can turn it back over to our Toastmaster.
Game over.